So as you guys know, I've been playing around with this text adventure RPG that uses openai and also something called LangChain to basically keep track of the conversation I'm having with the AI system so that when I ask it questions in the future, it can kind of go back and check what has already been discussed, what is the actual scenario for this adventure that we're going on. And when I first started building this, I was using something called buffer memory to store the information inside of the memory of the computer, right? The issue with that is that when I stop the program, it clears out all the known memory, right? So you don't know what your character is, you don't know where you are in the actual dungeon, you don't know how many hit points you have. It all kind of just gets wiped away, right? And that makes sense. So I've been looking into a way to basically store the history or the memory inside an external database so that when I kick this off again, it's going to continue off where we left off. So with that background information all being discussed, the reason I'm making this video is I want to discuss something that's very important when it comes to programming, and that is interfaces. You are using interfaces all the time. We declare functions and declare arguments and the return values of those functions. And you may not know about what an interface is if you're a beginner. Interfaces are a great way to allow you to extend and swap out functionality just by using like abstract classes and other types of approaches, right? So let me show you what I did. So what do I mean by that, right? Previously, we're using buffer memory, and I'm taking this variable and passing it to this memory argument of conversation chain, right? If you hover over this, you'll notice that memory has to be a base memory type of class. So what this allows us to do is that whenever you declare a new class, as long as it extends some existing functionality, like an abstract class or something like that, and if you keep diving down the extension chain, so like you'll notice that this one extends base memory, what this allows you to do is you can start declaring your own classes. And because they match the expecting interface of this memory property, everything will just work, right? So in order to extend, instead of using the in-memory buffer memory, I can use my own external memory. All I need to do is basically make my own generic chat memory. And notice that this is just a class that extends base chat memory. And when you extend an abstract class, most of your IDEs are going to give you like suggestions as to what you need to implement. For example, if I comment all this out, you'll notice that this is red saying that you are not implementing the correct abstract members. So if I go down here and say quick fix, notice that it'll add all the methods that I need to basically get started to enable this to store memory in an external database, right? So I added those required methods, and basically when the black box, which is this conversation chain, decides that it needs to either load or write the conversation history, it's going to call one of my two methods here. It's either going to call load memory variables or it's going to call save context. And because I follow the interface, it's very easy to kind of like extend the functionality just by taking these inputs, writing them to a database, or taking these inputs and fetching them from a database. Again, this video is more for like beginners. So if you're kind of advanced, you already know about object-oriented programming and abstract classes and interfaces, this is going to be like a boring video. But overall, the point I'm trying to make is that like all I needed to do was make a new class that extends that abstract class, and then I pass it my own methods for writing and loading history from my own type of data store. So in this case, I am storing and retrieving the history data in a third-party service called Convex, which is basically a backend as a service, and it also gives you the database without having to set that up as well. And notice that when at some point conversation chain decides to load the history, all I'm saying is query my database, call this load history method, and then join all of the conversation histories into a single string and return that, right? So all this thing needs to do is just return a string of the previous chat conversations together, and this thing can figure out how to like do what it needs to do, right? Same thing with writing history events. I get an input and a response, and I just need to write that somewhere. It doesn't matter what database I write that to. This could be a file store, this could be somewhere else. But this thing is written in a good way where like it depends on a nice interface that allows you to kind of swap that out whenever you need to. So let me just run this real quick. I'm gonna say npm run start. Okay, and so that's gonna basically, you know, set me up with like, you are a warrior, you're going to go into a haunted place, and then it's asking, are we ready to begin? I'm gonna say, yes, we are ready, like this. All right, a group of undead creatures approaches you, their eyes glowing with the eerie light. They raise their swords. Roll a 20-sided die to determine your attack roll. Let's just go ahead and roll one real quick. I'll do a 9. Okay, and it kind of tells you that you hurt one of the undead creatures, and then they also strike me. The point I'm going to show here is that if you go up to your database now, notice that that history has been stored inside a table here, where I have the chronological order of all the inputs and the responses from openai. And behind the scenes, when LangChain decides that it needs to like tack on another call. It's just using this database under the hood, right? All I had to do is extend an interface and I'm like good to go. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is important to understand how implicit and explicit interfaces work in software. I mean, you use them all the time, whether you know about them or not. And using something like TypeScript or Java or strongly typed static languages allows you to have an explicit interface defined so that people can come by and easily extend your lower level library if they need to, right? So the better you define your interface, the better your abstraction could potentially be. All right, so now that I kind of got that out of the way, I do want to talk about some of the hurdles I'm running into with this project. One thing is every time that you basically, roll a dice or send in a command, this has to take all of the previous conversation history and it sends it to OpenAI. So this continuously gets larger and larger and larger as the game goes on. And at some point, after like 5 or 6 responses that you type in, the token length gets about 1,000. Now, I think OpenAI with this turbo model charges like 0.0015 cent per 1,000 tokens. So basically, this is going to start adding up, right? You're going to keep on getting charged as your game gets longer and longer. And also, you're going to hit limitations. There's only so many input tokens that you can provide these models. Some are set to 4,000, some are 8,000, some have a much higher threshold, but they have different costs associated with them, right? So one thing I started adding into this game was basically after you have X amount of prompts that get run, what we're going to do is we basically summarize the state of the game, and we have OpenAI basically print out that summary somewhere. Let me just go ahead and roll again. I'm going to roll 20. At some point, it should summarize, and it should print out how much health I have, what's in my inventory. Here it is. Okay, so all right, so what I'm doing after like 5 or 6 prompts is I'm telling OpenAI to please summarize the game state, including the goals, the current location, player health, items into a single paragraph so we can easily continue at a later time. Please use the least amount of words as possible, okay? So what this does is it basically prints out the state, and it says the player is currently engaged in a battle with undead creatures. They have successfully landed hits on 2 of the creatures, dealing 6 points of damage each. The player has also managed to block 2 attacks, take no damage. There are still 2 undead creatures remaining. The player's current location is unknown and their health and inventory are not specified. Again, why I'm doing all this is so that if someone were to decide to close the game and come back, it's going to load in the chronological history. It's going to hopefully read in one of these summarized game states, and OpenAI is going to be able to basically resume where you left off, right? So it's only going to grab the past like 5 prompts. So these things will be omitted. So if there's anything that's super critical that was omitted here and that's not included in your summary, then you're going to actually like have a weird experience. So you kind of have to play around with like how much memory you want to give this thing. So in this case, I give it 5, but maybe you want to give it 10 or something. Again, the higher the memory, the more this will cost to keep playing. What I do is when the game first initializes, I check, is this the first time we've played? If not, then we ask OpenAI, remind me where we left off, okay? And if you notice here, it's going to use that history that's stored in the database, and it's going to say, you're currently engaged in battle with undead creatures. It basically just printed out the very last summary, but this could potentially, there could be more stuff above here that like needs to be summarized as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say, attack the creatures. So now there's goblins attacking me. This game's getting more intense. What I did also do is down here, I have a math.random. And if it's less than 0.15, then I also include this at the end of my prompt saying, please include a random battle encounter, right? So I think that's why I'm getting attacked by goblins now, is because I added some difficulty to say like, add in some more encounters. So now I'm fighting undead creatures and goblins. So that kind of sucks. Anyway, I've been having a little bit of fun with this, just elevating my knowledge with OpenAI. I do plan to hopefully make an actual interface for this, like a Next.js application UI that kind of shows maybe images of the game as we're playing. And then also the inventory. I could use DALL-E to generate images for the icons that are coming in. I think that would be really cool as well. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Have a good day and happy coding.